Hello again, everyone. This is Paul Ostrow, and I'm so thrilled to have you with us either live online on our YouTube channel or anytime you might be watching this interview. This is the last of the Civic Caucus's series of 10 interviews on restoring trust in our Minnesota institutions. It's a very wonderful series. We hope you check it out, and we're really pleased tonight as our final interview as a part of this topic to have the president of St. Thomas, Rob Vischer, with us. And I'll be introducing Rob in a moment. But first, I want to introduce our panel. We have three panelists that will be conducting the interview. First, I want to introduce Lee Munnich. Lee is a former senior fellow at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, the director of the State and Local Policy Program at the Humphrey Institute, and before that had a distinguished 23-year career in local government, which included 2 terms on the Minneapolis City Council. Lee, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I also want to introduce Feven Tesfaye. Feven is the vice chair of the Civic Caucus board. I've neglected to mention that Lee also is on our board. Feven is the vice chair of our Civic Caucus board, recently a graduate of Burnsville High School, a member of both the Minnesota Youth Council and the National Youth Leadership Council, has served as an intern at the Secretary of State's office, and only within the last couple days became the first Minnesotan to win a relatively newly established National Honor Society Top Scholarship Award. Feven, first of all, congratulations on that wonderful honor. We're thrilled to have you with us. Thank you for joining our panel.
Thank you.
And then finally, we are joined by Helen Baer. Helen is our board treasurer. She holds a bachelor's in linguistics from McGill University, can speak Spanish, German, and French, and has studied Swahili and Yiddish. That's rather remarkable. She is currently an instructional designer at St. Thomas, has a strong background in public policy and government, and we're very excited to have Helen, you here tonight to help us interview President Vischer.
Thank you, Paul.
And then finally, it is my honor to represent our guest tonight, President Rob Vischer. Rob became the 16th president of the University of St. Thomas in January of 2023. He joined St. Thomas in 2005 as an associate professor of law and was appointed dean of the law school in 2013. He received his law degree from Harvard Law School and was on the Harvard Law Review because of his outstanding leadership of St. Thomas. But beyond that, because of the fact that President Vischer has become a civic leader in our community as well, Rob was named the Twin Cities Business Magazine's Person of the Year in 2025. So we are thrilled to have you with us, President Vischer. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
So I'm going to start with you, Rob. You said I could call you Rob instead of Mr. President, so that's what I will do from now on. Rob, the first question to get us going has to do with the value of a college education. There's been a lot of conversation about this over the last period of years. And from your perspective and your experience, what is the value of a college education in today's world, and how has that changed since you became involved in higher ed?
Yeah, so I think the perception of how it's changed might be outpacing the reality of how it's changed. So two different dimensions of the value of higher education. The first one that gets most of the focus, understandably, is economic. What's the economic ROI on paying 4 years of tuition to earn a college degree? And we have the numbers to back that up. There's still a tremendous earnings premium over the course of a career for college degree holders versus non-college degree holders. And that hasn't changed. And we see it, we monitor this closely. I mean, there's a perception that AI is eroding the entry-level job market for college grads and it's depressing wages. And at least at St. Thomas, we're just not seeing it. For our class of 2025, our 98% of the class had positive career outcomes. 90% landed in a full-time position. 89% had their positions by the time they graduated. And the median starting salary was just over $70,000. So, and that's all disciplines across the university. Class of 2026, certainly the jobs are competitive, but they're landing them at about the same rate they were for the class of 2025. So that we're not seeing. There's also this perception of, oh, well, you're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt when you get your college degree. Maybe that's true at some colleges. It's not true at St. Thomas. For those students who take out federal loans at St. Thomas, at graduation, the average indebtedness is about $23,000 or so. So if you're taking on average of that debt and you're landing a job, median starting salary just over $70,000, that's a pretty good ROI, I would say. But college cannot simply be distilled into an economic ROI. It really is a college that has its aspirations set in the right place is not just a career preparation academy. It's trying to equip and empower young people for lifelong flourishing. And so that value, it's harder to quantify, but you know it when you see it. And you can see it in the transformative effect that a college education can have on the person from the time they come in to the time they graduate. And we can get into what those components would be. But I would say that's where the real value is. Yes, there's economic value to be sure. But for young people today, and we know from statistics, this generation of college-age students is the loneliest age cohort in America. We know a majority report not having a sense of purpose or meaning. So if all colleges are doing is saying, "Hey, we're going to help you get a job and launch a career," that's fine. Those are table stakes, but we need to lift our gaze and aspire to even more than that in preparing this generation for the leadership that the world needs in the future.
Thank you, Rob, for that. Lee Munnich.
Well, let me ask you a question about artificial intelligence. It's changing the way people access information and form opinions. So how do you see AI affecting civic discourse and higher education?
Yeah, we're all sort of looking through a glass darkly right now as we're trying to predict the future of AI on all these various aspects of life. And there's consensus that it's going to change, but there's not consensus on how it's going to change. I would say a couple examples of that we talk to students a lot about is are are they taking advantage of opportunities to strengthen their media literacy? Do they have the critical thinking skills and their awareness where they can be evaluating the streams of information that they're receiving? Second, and this is where, I might be written off as a dinosaur, but I talk to students about the value I find in subscribing to a hard copy newspaper. And they almost none of them will do that. But the point I'm trying to make is the daily morning newspaper that you unfold on your breakfast table, that's one of the last non-self-curated streams of information that you have, right? So what we want them to be aware of is it is very easy to passively, not intentionally, but just passively slip into a self-defined bubble of news and information that just starts feeding you what you already think you want, right? What you already believe. And so AI will help media companies do that even more efficiently for sure. And so I think it's going to take more intentionality to break out of that and to expose ourselves to sources of information that stretch us and grow us and don't simply confirm the beliefs and perspectives that we came with that day when we opened up our phone or our laptop or our iPad. So I think a lot of it is just we're going to have to be so much more intentional and proactive in avoiding the bubbles that will be even more pervasive in the future than they are now.
Lee, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. No, that's good. Uh, I think what I'm wondering is how you as an institution are preparing for that because of the changes that it's bringing about in society and in preparing students. I mean, there's a lot of kind of worry about AI.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there seems to be a lot of benefits from the tool. So, how are you dealing with that in terms of your faculty and your students and dealing with some of the issues that come out of it?
Yeah, so our provost, Eddie Rojas, is leading that effort now, which consists of an external working group of experts from industry, some of them alumni, some of them just friends of the university who are kind of leading the charge on AI in the Bay Area or in other often large firms. So we really have a cutting edge insight on what's happening. And then internally, we have 9 different working groups looking at different areas of operations or classroom experiences or ethics or that are working through problems. Now, a university is not a command and control operation. It's not going to be, I'm issuing a ruling of this is how AI is going to be implemented in every classroom. No, no, no. Faculty are in a discernment process, and they're going to come at it from different angles. What we're trying to do university-wide, though, is making sure that we're in a position to implement and integrate AI in ways that actually might strengthen our mission and the student-centered environment that we have rather than detract from it. So I'll give you an example. Our faculty who serve as academic advisors for students, one of their complaints is so much of their time with students is spent just going through the checklist to make sure they've met all the curricular requirements for their major and for the core curriculum graduation requirements. And it takes time because it can be complicated depending on the field. And they don't have as much time as they want to really get into deeper questions that they would like to be focused on with their students. Well, we're hopeful that AI can do a lot of that checking the box aspect of academic advising and open up more human relationship and interaction. There's other areas, obviously, where if AI is replacing or marginalizing the authentic human connection, well, that's a problem. And students are super aware of that. We have 7 different graduation ceremonies at St. Thomas. And I had just read how a lot of universities were going to an AI reader for graduates' names when they walked across the platform. So at every ceremony, I just mentioned as kind of an aside, I said, when you come up to the stage, you will hand your name card to an actual human being who will read your name. And every ceremony, the graduate section erupted in cheers. Right? There is a real sense among this generation of, yes, they know they're graduating into what will increasingly be an AI-infused economy, but there is a hunger to keep the authentic human at the center of their experience. And if you saw the news, there were several universities that had commencement speakers who were just sort of extolling the unbridled virtues of the AI world for these graduates and how exciting it is. And they were roundly booed. Right. And it's not that this generation is trying to hold back the historical wave of AI that we're seeing or is ignorant of the benefits that AI can bring. I interpret it as saying they are more cautious because they know how important it is to keep that human connection. They want to see meaningful roles for them in organizations and using their gifts to connect with the needs of the world. So we're approaching it on multiple facets. We don't have all the answers by any stretch, but one North Star for us is AI at its best should enhance our student-centered culture, and it should not make students feel even more disconnected from actual human relationships.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And I'll just mention I do get a physical paper every morning for exactly the reasons you described. It's to physically hold what's in front of me. And I hadn't even really noted the fact that maybe that's the last non-algorithmically sort of curated stream coming in. So that's important. But thank you. I'll sort of touch on this media literacy, critical thinking and awareness, those pieces that are important. I am curious because, universities are often expected to be places of where people might encounter ideas that they disagree with. And there've been, at St. Thomas, we've had initiatives with Braver Angels and a lot. You've done a lot in your leadership to foster this kind of dialogue, disagreement, but it's hard. People are in their bubbles often as well. So how can the university, how do you as well lead the institution to be that space where students, faculty, and staff really can engage thoughtfully across differences?
Yeah. Great question. I'd say there's two fundamental dimensions, foundational dimensions to it. I'd say one is creating opportunities for students, and two, modeling for students. So many students today have grown up in a world where they really have not seen healthy, productive civil discourse. It's been more a culture where you just choose your side and then you do everything you can to demonize those who are not on your side. And so we're modeling. We have to model. So that means, so when I was at the law school, we had it's still going. It's a long-running series called Hot Topics, Cool Talk, and we'd invite all the students who wanted to come in, and we would serve lunch because it was good that we were breaking bread together, and it would be really controversial topics, whether it's abortion or the nature of marriage or stem cells or immigration policy or just war theory, whatever it was, controversial, and then bringing two leaders in the field in who fundamentally disagreed with each other, and to have a meal together and listen to them debate the issue. It was important that students could just watch that they were disagreeing without being disagreeable. And in many cases, they were two leaders in the field who knew each other and were friends, and that was really important. We have a lot of events. You try to be careful as you're putting together programs and events in a university. Who are you bringing in? Are you bringing in kind of the big names who will get the most eyeballs and the most clicks? Or are you bringing people who actually understand what it means to lead a respectful discourse and debate? So, there's lots of examples. I think we had 3 different university-wide programs and discussions about Gaza during the height of that. We didn't have any disruptions or protests or walkouts. And I think part of that is who's doing the speaking and how they're engaging those who disagree with them. So that's the modeling. And there's lots of different examples there. And then the opportunities. We got to invite students into this space because many of the students want this opportunity. So one of our relatively new student clubs is called Bridge St. Thomas. And the whole club is just giving students who want this chance to come together and engage in a discussion about a topic with students who have a totally different political perspective than they do. And that'll be guided by faculty who help facilitate it, but just gives them experience of expressing their views to someone who disagrees, having that person listen, and then express why they disagree and going back and forth. Students want this, and that's great. So we give them that opportunity. Also, just I would say it's important as you're building trust across difference, there's a tendency to lead with the disagreement. We lead with the idea. We want to talk about what this debate is about, rather than let's lead with understanding who I am and understanding who you are. So we have lots of different storytelling initiatives on campus where we're giving students the opportunity to tell their story. One of the initiatives we have that I think has been fabulous that I've participated in myself, it's called the 6-word memoir. And what you do, you bring students or staff or faculty together and you sit down and you say, okay, you spend 15 minutes in 50 words, write the story of your life, which is Not easy, but you got 50 words, write the story of your life. And then they're done with that. And then you say, okay, now you've got 10 minutes, cut it to 20 words. Okay, you do that. Now you've got 10 minutes, cut it to 6 words. And now share it with everybody else in your group. And in my experience, that's really powerful. When someone says, here are the 6 words I would choose to convey who I am and what my life journey has been, that's tough. And when you listen to that, you're giving an opportunities to form relationships without regard to agreement or political alignment. I mean, so often now it's as though we treat political agreement as a precondition for relationship, and that's getting it totally backwards. So it's not just giving good debate chances and opportunities to students. It's, are we making sure we have opportunities to form the relationship, not following political alignment, but apart from political alignment?
Wonderful.
Yeah. May I add just a brief follow-up to that? I love there's so many examples of campus-wide engagement that you even just mentioned that doing this. How do you see that also taking shape in the classroom with faculty, dialogue, discussion, led by faculty, led by the courses that students are taking, and encourage that discussion to happen also in the classroom?
It's tougher to generalize on that. I mean, we have 450 full-time professors at St. Thomas, and they're going to take lots of different approaches. I would say, I spent many years teaching in law school classrooms, and the challenge was not managing the debate and the disagreement among students. The challenge was getting students to offer their opinions if they felt it would trigger disagreement. The majority of students do not want to be involved in a rancorous battle over, culture war issues or red, blue, tribal politics. They don't want that. So in my experience, the risk of our broader culture for the classroom environment is not that the classroom becomes this raging battle. It's that the classroom becomes silent when you're talking about issues that have any controversy to them. And so I think a lot of the professor's task is building the trust and the willing embrace of vulnerability, so students will bring their authentic selves and vocalize them in this sort of miniature academic community that they have for three hours a week for a 12-week period. That's hard. Cultivated against this broader cultural background, cultivating the trust in this small environment to be countercultural and to be a high trust environment. That's where I think the skills of the professor come into fruition.
Thank you.
Feven.
Firstly, thank you for all those great insights. I think I'm going to apply a lot of the things that you've learned, and I've seen it in action. So it was great to hear it from your perspective. But my question is that one of the goals in St. Thomas 2030 strategic plan is to expand the university's visibility and impact on a national scale. So looking ahead, what do you hope the University of St. Thomas will be known for across the nation by 2030? And kind of to follow up, what kind of attention and students do you hope to attract by that date?
Yeah, that's great. So the last part of it, first I'll say that what kind of students do we hope to attract? Well, the same kind of students we attract now. I think we've got awesome students. They're wonderful. So the national aspirations get back to this. One of our vulnerabilities as a university is that we are a little bit too reliant on Minnesota for our enrollment, right? We're by far the largest private university in Minnesota, just under 10,000 students, but 80% of our students come from Minnesota, which is fine. And it's been that way for many years, and will always be a Minnesota predominant university. But demographic changes that are coming, meaning we're not making as many 18-year-olds as we used to, right? Birth rates started to decline coming out of the Great Recession, and they are not going to come back. That is following the global patterns in the developed economies. That means it's fine for us now, but in 5-10 years, if we're still at 80% of our enrollment from Minnesota, we're going to have some trouble because in the upper Midwest, we're losing, or in the upper Midwest and the Northeast, the birth rates are declining. And so we just need to expand our geographic footprint for enrollment. So what will we be known for? We have many marks of distinction at St. Thomas. I mean, we're a top 10 school for entrepreneurship in the country. We've got one of the top undergrad engineering programs. We've got this new College of Health that's doing awesome work in different fields. Our business school, among all business school, educates among the most C-suite executives in the country. We got lots of things to brag about. The issue is that we don't get the earned media that universities rely on. And how does the vast majority of universities' earned media arise? Well, for better or for worse, it arises from college sports. So if you look at, we're among the top 15 largest Catholic universities in the country. And if you look at the others in that group, they are much more national names than we are. The difference is they've been Division I universities for quite a while, and until just last year, this past year was our first fully reclassified year as a Division I university. We've spent almost 140 years as a D3 college. So that's not the most glamorous answer, but it's the reality of how visibility in higher ed works. If you're not making news through college sports at some level, you're leaving out a massive lever for your visibility. So I hope that we're in 5 years. I hope we're known for the things we're already good at and getting better at. I hope the students are a lot like the students we have already. I just hope that we're known more outside the upper Midwest. That's something we've got to look for. And we do it not just because of our business model, but because of our mission. We believe in our mission. Like St. Thomas, we do a really good job of educating students, and we want that to be impactful on a broader basis.
You have a follow-up, Feven?
Yeah, less on the actual, like, of course, the sports and the attention, but is there something in the structure of St. Thomas, like the way you teach, or I don't know, what you previously talked about, encouraging discourse between students? Is there something specific like that you hope other universities can take from St. Thomas?
Well, I won't claim that this is unique to St. Thomas. I'll say one thing that's distinctive is we're kind of in a sweet spot in terms of our size, in that we're big enough to be a comprehensive university with, well over 100 majors and lots of graduate programs and partnerships with employers that are really helpful for students. So we've got the size that allows us to do some things you're not going to do at a small liberal arts college. At the same time, our average class size is 22 students, right? And you're not going to be taught by graduate students. You're going to be taught by professors. You're going to know your professors. They're going to know you. You're going to know your classmates. So it's that sweet spot of relationship and the size to do some really cool things because of the scope and scale. None of that matters if you don't understand what your mission is. So those are the conditions that allow us really to live out the mission. And as a Catholic university, what we want to do is engage in whole person formation, where we want our students to grow body, mind, and spirit, to walk along with them, not just as they're learning in their discipline, but as they're growing in their faith tradition, whatever that might be, and as they're learning to become the person that they were created to be, where they're learning how to build trust across difference, where they're strengthening their own appreciation for beauty and their capacity to contribute to beauty, where they understand the world's history at a different level than they did in high school, where they are cultivating their leadership skills, growing in confidence, being more self-aware about the unique ways in which they've been gifted by God to make connections and to contribute to the common good. So lots of things that happen from that. What I'm always telling students is all this cool stuff is going on. Yeah, you got the job stuff and you're getting your major and you're checking the boxes up, but lift your gaze. Lift your gaze. It's more. This is a great opportunity. You are preparing yourself for lifelong flourishing, not just for a job. Lift your gaze. And so that's the sweet spot. If we can, if we can gain in national visibility and maintain that core that we believe we are helping prepare our students for lifelong flourishing, we'll be in fabulous shape.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, I'm going to hop in with a question, then throw it back to the panel. When I think about this issue of trust in higher education, one of the things that comes to mind is this critique of higher ed as having a quote unquote liberal bias. And certainly a lot of that seems to be impacted by some of the socially divisive issues, culturally divisive issues. But, obviously, well, my view, and I'm going to try to limit the question as I told others to do, but, this push-pull between free markets and government regulation, the size of government, respecting the past, but preparing for the future, what kind of country are there? There are conservative thought leaders that are important and need to be engaged, along with those on the more progressive side of things. So I guess the question is, how do you address that stereotype, perhaps? I think it is a stereotype of higher ed as having these liberal leanings. And how do you address that? First of all, is there any validity to that in your view? And if there isn't, how do you set the record straight, so to speak?
Yes. Does higher ed as a sector skew more toward the left side of the political spectrum than the right? Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that when you look at university faculties and where the preponderance of voting registration is. I think that's true. And thankfully, I don't have to defend or stick up for or vouch for all of higher ed as a sector. I'm here, I tell the story of St. Thomas, and let me back up a little bit, because yes, there is certainly a perception that has caused tension on the conservative side with higher ed's liberal leanings. I think a more fundamental threat to higher ed in the political sector is not partisan. It's actually growing in a bipartisan way, and that's this. We've got these emerging populist threads on both the right and the left. And in both, there are elements that have defined the elites to include higher ed. And I always tell people that the threats to higher ed won't leave when President Trump leaves office. They're not necessarily going to leave even if a Democrat comes back into office. We have to help people understand, whether you're a populist or not, if you're trying to drag down higher ed, that's really bad for society on multiple levels. Now, does that mean that higher ed has been perfect and how it's carried out its mission over the years? Absolutely not. It doesn't. There are things where higher ed can reform. And again, I don't criticize or attack other universities, but for St. Thomas, what we try to do is we want to make sure that everything we do, we can answer the question, is this good for students? Right? Is this good for students? And so you have to keep an eye on the value proposition, as we talked about, the economic ROI. That has to be front and center in what you do. It's not the extent of what you do, but it's got to be front and center. Second, are you cultivating an environment where students can speak their minds, where they can bring their own worldview and political perspective and religious convictions to the booming, buzzing debate that a university campus should be? Or does some feel like, my viewpoint's not going to be welcome, I better sit this one out and just go over here? If that's the case, well, that's a problem that we need to improve on. But I want to tell the story of St. Thomas, and I think visitors to our campus will quickly observe that, we're not a left-wing or right-wing indoctrination factory. We're actually a university with a critical mass of conservative students, faculty, and staff, and of progressive conservative or students, faculty, and staff, and everyone in between. One of the things that I caution folks about it who visit St. Thomas is, like, during all the tumult when we had encampments on college campuses, and we didn't have that at St. Thomas. And encampments aren't always bad. I'm not saying that, but it was very calm at St. Thomas. It doesn't mean our students weren't politically engaged. I met with students about Gaza, about divestment, about all those things, but it was approaching it in the context of relationship, where I had student groups saying, "Hey, could we meet with you next week?" And we talked through, and it didn't result in them disrupting anything or walking out. It resulted in better understanding, even if there's still disagreement. We also have one of the highest voting participation rates among any colleges in Minnesota. So it's not that our students are apathetic. They show up and they vote. They're just not trying to shut down the conversation. But I think tell your college's story. Don't try to take on all of the criticism that's targeting higher ed, because you're never going to be able to do that. And some of the criticism is well placed.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Can throw it out to whoever on the panel wants to ask a second question.
Well, let me ask, all big institutions are sort of dealing with challenges of trust and concern. What do you view as your role as president of St. Thomas, a major higher education institution?
In what? Just the role in general?
Just your role in general. What are the most important things that you see your role as a president to do?
Yeah, I'm the leader of the institution. I'm the keeper of the story, and I'm the steward of the mission.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
Those are my most important roles. Like, I am leading the place, but it's not a dictatorship by any means.
Right,
It's,
yeah.
I'm leading with hopefully a compelling vision that is consistent with our mission that extends all the way back to 1885. I am the keeper of the story, in that as I interact with our internal stakeholders, our external stakeholders, alumni spanning all the decades, I am articulating the thread that binds us to all the generations that came before and those that will come after, and explaining it in ways that our current stakeholders discern how they can engage and support what we're trying to be in this world and do in this world. And I'm the steward of the mission, in that, not solitarily, but at the end of the day, I'm the steward of the mission, where we can't fall into the trap of trying to be all things to all people. We are, 142-year-old Catholic university in St. Paul and Minneapolis and Rome, and we want to live out our mission in ways that make a difference in the world, that change lives, strengthen families, and improve communities. That means we can't just be whatever anybody wants us to be. And I've got to steward that to make sure we're faithful to those who've come before us, and we're faithful to those who'll come after us.
Thank you.
Great.
Rob, I'll just jump in. Also, I've had the privilege of working at St. Thomas, so I have seen firsthand much of what you've described throughout our conversation. Also being a place where people of many different backgrounds kind of come together. And I think as well about sort of what Lee started asking about leadership and thinking about public trust, and appreciate that you're responding as your perspective, leading St. Thomas, and wonder how St. Thomas can respond to public trust, either criticisms of higher ed, or everyone's going to take some issue with what's going on, and I think the ROI piece, there's a lot of hype about higher ed, and is it where students should be spending their time? And how do we help the public feel and hear these stories that are so strong on campus, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of it is going to happen one relationship at a time. And there's also, I mean, there's a wave of anti-higher ed sentiment going through now. I'm not going to stand up and be able to stop that wave. So part of it is you're both keeping your head down, knowing that this wave eventually will pass. But in the meantime, you're trying to strengthen key relationships with an understanding of what the reality on the ground is at St. Thomas. So I spend a lot of time, as much as I can, talking to legislators and elected officials, key business leaders. I'm very active in Minnesota Business Partnership and Greater MSP and the United Way Board. And so, really what my role is relationships. That's what I do, and making sure that they understand, because that can be helpful, but the wave is going to crash, and that the wave is the wave, and that's not fully stoppable right now. And so the other thing I try to do is equip the members of our community with as much information as possible, so that they can, in their circles, have an influence in helping tell the St. Thomas story. And you build trust one person at a time in many cases.
Very true.
Yeah. I also have another question. In a society where many people consume a lot of information, I know you previously talked about AI use and having that newspaper every morning, but where do you think universities should play in creating a foundation of facts and information for students?
I don't know that universities have a prudent role creating the foundation for facts and information. Like we're not so much as universities, we're not so much in the creation side of that. Now, individual faculties and aspects of what we do through university presses or student media or things like that, then they certainly do. I think our main role is helping our students equip themselves with the tools necessary to be wise and careful interpreters of what they're seeing. And it's made more complicated by the fact that in the current environment, the debate over truth and factual knowledge is so wrapped up with our partisan divide as well, that's why it's and I know you weren't suggesting this, but like for me to say, well, this is the news source you should be looking for because that's the one that's trustworthy. It's more at a deeper level. How do we give our students the experiences and the knowledge and the confidence where they are going forth and they're able to recognize the difference between a well-sourced story in The Economist and a clickbait headline on their feed, that those aren't the same? And how do you gravitate more toward one than the other is kind of how I'd see it. It's on the educational side primarily.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rob, I have another question. That is, I thought it was really interesting, the article that you wrote, I think it was in the Star Tribune, about AI. And one of the really interesting pieces of it is in that article, it referred to a survey of business leaders as to what the most important traits would be in the era of AI. And in order, they were integrity, vision, inspiration, motivation, and drive. And it struck me as interesting in the sense that it's not about knowledge. It's not about even analytical ability. Those are things perhaps that AI itself can do, but it just struck me those are human traits
Yeah.
that perhaps AI can never replicate. I just found that really interesting, that business leaders, and I'm wondering, is that different than you think it would have been 30, 40 years ago in terms of the traits that they thought were critical?
Yeah, yeah, probably is. AI is automating cognitive tasks at a faster and faster rate. And so if a university conceives of itself as only existing to teach this set of students how to perform this particular set of cognitive tasks that you need to perform to be an accountant or a lawyer or an architect or whatever, they're going to be there. That universe is shrinking.
Hmm.
But if you're helping them develop the real human attributes that will equip them, no matter how technology changes the world, to be of use, whether it's being as sort of the liaison intermediary between technology and your client base, or whether it's to synthesize various components that are coming from technology, or at least at this point, there is still a great need for critical thinking as we're evaluating what technology is providing. I do think the liberal arts are making a rebound, and people are seeing that, because it's not just teach me how to do X, it's prepare me for a lifetime of X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and some combination thereof.
Hmm. Great.
Well, I have another question. You're one of the things about working in the higher education environment is your opportunity to interact with the next generation of young people going into the workplace, going into society. So, what gives you hope about the next generation's ability to engage across these political, cultural, and ideological differences?
Yeah. Um, every generation tends to react to the generation that came before. And my generation has done such a terrible job at that. It gives me hope. On a more observational level, the sincerity of students today is so much greater than the lack of sincerity that many of my friends and I showed in college. Like there's, some of the things I talk to young people today about when I was their age, and if somebody my age was talking about those things, I would have rolled my eyes and said, okay, whatever. That seems pretty cheesy. Because we talk about purpose and meaning and what it means to build a culture of encounter, and they're not rolling their eyes. They want to do better. They want, and I'm sure COVID fed into this, and technology has certainly fed into that. They do want authentic connection, and so they're wide open to this. They're less interested in winning. I mean, I'm overgeneralizing, but compared to previous generations, I think they're less focused on winning the fight and more focused on understanding myself, understanding others, and building relationship where I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, just building on that culture of encounter, which I'm familiar with at St. Thomas, and your idea of whole person formation as well. How it's interesting thinking about reacting to generations previously. Do you think that or generative AI and these trends will help propel people towards these things? Because sometimes, like I still feel that things can be rather at times vocational, or people's what people in general in society or in education think is like, what's your goal or the destination or the place to reach? How do we help these transcendental aspects, even like the beauty that you've worked on with the Claritas initiative? How do we help that have an ROI, so to speak? I guess it's a lot easier to make the case for an economic one than it is like a social or a relational one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that everybody should be trying to figure out. I don't think AI is going to help. I mean, and if whether a person's Catholic or not, I recommend highly Pope Leo's encyclical Magnificat Humanitas about AI and the human person. And one of his points is it's the worry that people growing up in this environment, it's not that they'll begin to value the connection with the connection with their AI agent more than a real human connection. It's that they won't even have enough of an experience with the real human connection to know that they're missing it, right? So I do think you're already seeing this. I mean, with young people who maybe haven't grown in confidence yet, and they're trying to figure out themselves and the world around them. And boy, an AI person who makes no demands from you, who's always there and will tell you exactly what you want to hear, that sounds pretty good. And I do think that is a real threat. And so we've got to be proactive and planful in giving our young people the real deal. I mean, this gives a much bigger conversation, but the notion that, years ago we decided that the most advanced schools, we should just automatically be handing out screens to, 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds. So I mean, now we look back and say, well, that was a terrible decision to do, right? So I think there will be a greater premium on real human experiences because people will see the difference if given the opportunity. But we need institutions, universities and community organizations and even, elected officials having it on their radar screen that human connection matters. So, I mean, at St. Thomas, what I tell our students the same thing on their first day of orientation as I tell them at graduation right before they walk across the stage and get their diplomas. And it's that, our greatest aspiration for them is not that they get a job. Yes, we want them to get a job, and we're very good at helping them get a job, but that's not our greatest aspiration. It's also not that their years at St. Thomas will be the highlights of their lives. I think that is profoundly depressing when somebody my age tells a 22-year-old that the best years of their lives are already behind them at graduation. I'd say here's our aspiration for you. It's very straightforward, that you'll emerge from your time at St. Thomas with the unshakable knowledge that you are loved, that your life has purpose, that your work has meaning, and that you've been uniquely gifted by God to make irreplaceable contributions to our world. If we can do that, everything else falls into place. I really believe that. And so if whatever changes AI presents or other technological developments we don't even see right now, if we can deliver on that aspiration, we're going to be okay, because that you can't deliver on that without keeping the human relationship at the center of what you're doing. And as a Catholic university, the human relationship is a reflected of God's love for each one of our students. So that's the culture of encounter, of taking Pope Francis's call to make sure that every person in our environment that we can have connection to has an experience of being seen and known and loved. That's what we want to do. And we can do it. Like, this is not rocket science. We can do it. I'll give you one quick example. A dad of a freshman student emailed me to let me know that his son had emailed him and wanted his dad to know that every day, and this is first semester freshman year, every day when he went to our food court, the guy who made his sandwich greeted him by name, told him something funny that made him smile, and started making his sandwich before he even ordered it, because he knew what sandwich he was going to order. And that's what the son wanted his dad to know about St. Thomas and his experience there, that the sandwich guy knew him and made him feel good every day. Like, that's the culture of encounter. That is it. That is it. Everybody can be part of the culture of encounter. Everybody has some exposure to another human being. And if you can get a whole campus community to be focused on, do I have an opportunity to make this person feel seen, known, and loved today? Nothing else matters.
Wow, fantastic. Feven, you're the person here who is headed off to higher ed. And so it seems to be appropriate to ask, have you asked the last question? And then I have a quick wrap up question for President Vischer. Feven, take it away.
Yeah. So many civic engagement initiatives tend to attract students who are already greatly involved and invested in those activities. And I know St. Thomas has a very great track record of engaging a lot of students, but even in those times, there tends to be students that are left on the margins and don't see themselves a part of those conversations. So, what, as a president and leader of St. Thomas, have you tried to do to engage all students across the student body to see themselves in those decision-making conversations?
Yeah, great question. Because most of what we do in this area is invitation, not imposition, right? And so how do you get to everybody? So I'll give you one example of how we're trying to do it. We have a class called the First Year Experience here that every new student takes. And this year we're giving them assigned reading where we're buying all the books for them and we'll give it to them. There's a new book by Arthur Brooks called The Meaning of Your Life. And it is really going deep into what does it mean to live a meaningful life? It means you've got a life that has coherence, meaning you can explain how your life fits together, how the different chapters have formed a narrative. Your life has purpose. You understand why are you heading in this direction, and your life has significance. You can explain, you understand why you matter, right? And so we're assigning that book to everybody. Arthur Brooks is going to come spend the day with us, and we're going to have that conversation. Now, can I force every first year student to really be vulnerable and embrace that conversation at a deep level? No, but they're going to have every opportunity to do so. And those conversations, when they're undertaken in community, they naturally give rise to a depth of mutual understanding and connection that I think can be a foundation for lots of the other things we're talking about here. But like if you're going to build a culture that is sustainable over time with high levels of trust and engagement over issues that matter with people who have different views of the world than you do, at some level, there has to be an opportunity to know and to be known. And what's going to give rise to those opportunities? So can we guarantee it's going to be everybody? No, but everybody is going to be required to read the book and have a conversation about it. And so we'll see. Those are the kinds of things we struggle with, is figuring out how do you reach everybody. And it's not going to be perfect, but we're putting resources and time and effort into doing it.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
So, President Vischer, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. And since you're the last of 10 of our interviews on restoring trust in our Minnesota institutions, and also because you're not only a leader in education, you're a leader in the business community. You have worked with elected officials and others throughout many of our major institutions. What gives you confidence, not just for higher ed, but all of our civic institutions, that 5, 10 years from now, there will be an increased faith in all of our institutions, from policing to faith communities to education to government, right on down the line? What gives you some confidence that we can bring back a faith in our major institutions generally? And I'll let you finish with that.
Yeah, well, I would say confidence might be overstating it.
Okay.
Do I have a hope in that?
Hope.
I do. And two, it's twofold. One is pendulums tend to come back. It's a little different when you're talking about a dissolution of trust. That doesn't just automatically come back. It has to be rebuilt. And where the pendulum comes back, I am hopeful for, is we do have sort of culture setter, trend setter elected officials on both sides who have been more interested in firing up the outrage machine to motivate the base of people who already agree with them than to try to carve out a path where more people can come together across traditional dividing lines in some, not necessarily shared vision, but at least some tangentially connected vision to move forward together. And that gives me some hope. And the other part of it is just the mode that we're in now. It's just exhausting. Like it's got to give at some point, and it can give in ways that just the wheels come off more. I choose to believe that it's going to give in the sense that more responsible, reasonable voices will rise up and say, we don't have to live like this. We can actually live in a relationship.
Well, speaking perhaps for all of us, there's a real hunger for voices like yours. And so that's why we so appreciate hearing from you. And we thank you so very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is such a great service to the community. I appreciate all your time and energy and expertise.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.